and welcome to Caribbean Brilliance, where we shine a light on Caribbean Americans and their accomplishment, hoping that they could be a beacon of light to the present and future generation. I am your host, Miss Francois, and today I have an amazing guest by the name of Dale Joseph. Now, people, I try to find things about her, but all she has is a simple LinkedIn, so I think she's wanted by some kind of authority. So this is the first time that I've ever, since I've hosted this show, I'm going to ask the guest, Miss Dale Joseph, to introduce herself. Hi, Miss Joseph.
Hi, how are you, Patrice?
I am wonderfully well. So
Good.
tell the people who you are, what you're about.
So I will say first and foremost, I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister primarily, and then there are other things that I think comprise who I am. I'm a servant leader. I've done a lot of community work. I believe in community and building community and supporting people who may not have the voice to access what they need to access.
Awesome. As you can see, she's already a great guest, okay? Because I believe we can learn a lot of things from her. But as always, the whole premise of the show is she a Caribbean American, so we got to get in some island background. So where were you born or where are you from?
I was born in Guyana and lived there for about 4 years, moved to Trinidad with my parents, obviously. And then we relocated to Barbados, which was where we lived prior to my coming to the U.S.
So 4 years in Guyana. How long in Barbados?
I would say about 2 years.
2 years. And
Yeah.
how long in Trinidad? The greatest island on earth.
I would say about three, four years.
So 3 islands. Normally we just have one flag, but I had to put 3 different flags to represent one person. Okay? And with those 3 islands, well, I don't know where your parents was running from, but obviously they was running from something. Thank God you were too young to realize that. But coming from 3 different islands, did you take anything from each island? From whatever you might remember? I know you were young, but still someone have some memories. So what would you say you took from each island?
I mean, I think that what I would say is the people with whom my family connected are people who we're still very close with. Families from Guyana, for example, learning about the Guyanese culture, primarily through them. My family, my father's side of the family, which is Guyanese, and so learning a lot from them, not having remembered much about Guyana growing up as an infant and a toddler. I mean, I would say the cultures are rich, the people are warm, the educational system is
And that's Guyana? We're talking about all 3 islands.
I mean, I would say Barbados because that's where my last residence was before moving to Queens. And so what I remember is coming to this country straight from Barbados, having an accent, number one, sounding very different, going into a public school setting. But because of the system in which I was educated, coming here and being maybe a grade advanced, a grade ahead of where some of my other classmates were, which, you know, really was good for us, my sister and I, but it wasn't that great socially because, you know, kids find a way of finding differences and looking at those differences as weaknesses as opposed to strengths. So we had a lot of adjusting to do. But I would say the educational system that I experienced in Barbados was excellent. And I felt, you know, looking back that I was prepared for today. I mean, I think that really set the foundation for me in terms of my educational foundation.
And you see how you mentioned coming here, and sometimes kids can be cruel. So how is your sister older or younger?
She's a couple years older.
Older. So how did you adjust to coming here from, you said you had an accent, and even being from 3 different islands, so spending some time in each island, was the accent an issue to each one you went to?
I wouldn't say that. Possibly, you know, but you know, you tend to take on the accent and the voice of the parent that you're around the most, and that's my mother, and so my Bajan accent comes out more than, I don't have a Guyanese accent. I couldn't try to come up with a Guyanese accent because that's not what I grew up around a lot, and so it was an adjustment. You know, everything is always an adjustment. I think it made me a stronger person. It made me resilient. but I had to adapt. You know, you have to adapt, and I think a lot of people I know grew up in the islands, came around the same age that I came, and they still have their accents.
Right.
But when you have to deal with kids teasing and picking fights and all the things that are negative, you learn how to adapt. And so I had to learn how to manage, you know, my voice and how I sounded to fit in more. And so that was a big part of how I adjusted. But I think the strong educational system and the values around learning really stuck with me throughout my life, throughout college, grad school, working, etc.
And since you're trying to adjust through this whole thing, what is your parents like instilling certain things or saying certain things to you? Because a lot of times kids come home, maybe they're crying, maybe they're distant. Or how did your mom play a role in helping you to adjust?
Well,
If
she
she
was
did.
always very proactive, and so you know she stepped in when she had to step in. She's always an advocate, and so I learned how to become an advocate. You know, you have to sort of become stronger in this country as an immigrant and stand up for yourself. And you know, that is who she is. That's just who she is. She's not someone to sort of wilt and say, woe is me. You know, her strength, I think, carried me and my sister along. And so if there was an issue, she was there at the school, she stood up for us. But she also decided at one point that she needed to move us to a different school setting.
Really?
And she did that. And we were in a school that was probably equidistant from the first school we attended.
And was the school better in
It was
terms
it
of-
was a Catholic school. It
Okay.
was a smaller setting, and it was a more, at that time, more nurturing environment.
Okay.
And
So you would say it was a good move from the other school that you were in?
I
for
would say
you?
so. I would
Okay.
say so. It was a good move at that time.
And so with all this moving around, you think that like you kept talking about the school system, that was good. But even being here right now, do you think moving around like that at such a young age was positive or negative?
Actually, I think it was positive. I don't feel that there were, you know, I feel there were more pros than cons. I think that, you know, being exposed to different environments, and I was so young. By the time I was 9, you know, we were here in this country.
And with that, do you still go back? I guess which one do you call mostly Barbados home? I guess.
Oh
Or
yeah,
you,
definitely.
You go to Guyana also, or you just, or the only country you really visit is Barbados? Since
I
that was
visited,
your mom.
well, I visited Trinidad a couple of times as an adult, visited Barbados several times over the course of the many years that we've been in this country. So Barbados really is more like home than any place else.
Awesome.
That's
So
where my mother's from,
yeah.
and that's where her family is.
and that's where Rihanna is from. Okay.
Yes.
So, like a lot of times at that age, and you're coming from a different country, standing out, going through like the whole back and forth, having to switch schools, how you think that impacted you on some of the things? Like you spoke about your mom and what she was about. Like I'm assuming all those things impact to some of the things you went on to do as in studies or colleges and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So how did those things impact you deciding what it is that you wanted to do as you continue to get older, like your teenage years, your young adult years?
Well, I mean, academic achievement in my family, and I think many other Caribbean families, is always a priority.
You have to be doctor, lawyer, or
Not even that. Yeah, not even that. It wasn't about becoming a specific occupation per se, but it was more about doing the best you can and taking advantage of the opportunities in front of you. And as you know, growing up in the Caribbean, you know, it's so homogeneous.
Right.
And so everyone around you is being told the same thing
Yes.
by their families, right?
Yes.
It's about achieving, and it's about doing your best. And if you need extra help, you get lessons, you have to go to lessons, and you
Yes.
get the help, right? Those are things that you grew up with.
Right.
So for me, the idea of not doing my best was not an option. So luckily, I had a mother who, you know, prioritized that. And because of that, and I was, I think, you know, inclined to do well in school academically and had a good start, a good foundation. And so when it came time to go to high school after finishing the Catholic elementary school, I took the test to get into Brooklyn Tech. Brooklyn Tech Stuyvesant Bronx Science. So got into Brooklyn Tech, went there for 4 years. And, you know, at that time, Brooklyn Tech was very, very diverse. Many of the kids looked like me, and they were from Caribbean families as well. And American families, obviously, but a lot of the kids were from immigrant families.
Okay.
And so that was a great foundation for me academically, and then moved on to Stony Brook University, state school out in Long Island, studied sociology, and then decided to go on to get my master's.
But
And
this was always what you envisioned for yourself?
I
Like
wouldn't
what?
say I envisioned it. I
Right.
think I went in with an open mind in terms of what I wanted to do and think and learn. I think I should probably have taken more classes in different subjects, but I was kind of focused on maybe doing nursing because my mother at that time was a nurse. And so very much thinking about maybe I would like to do that. I had done some volunteering at her hospital, and wasn't really my thing. When I got to the first biology class, I was like, this is not for me. This is not my strength, you
Yeah.
know, but I was able to then, as part of getting ready for nursing, I decided, you know, I have to take some other electives. So I took sociology, and that was where I really realized that I was very interested in societies and people and their connections to each other. And so then I became a sociology major.
Wow, that's a lot. But you see,
Yeah.
like when you're saying it, from what I'm hearing or what some of the viewers might hear is like she had everything so perfectly planned out. You went from one to the next. So how come you wasn't one of those people that I'm gonna take a break? I'm tired. This is too much school. I need to discover and find more of myself. How come that's something you never necessarily did since you went from school to school to school?
Right. So between college and grad school, I had an opportunity through the Woodrow Wilson Foundation. And that foundation had a fund, a grant to support young people, college graduates who wanted to pursue public policy, public administration as a field. And so when I was at Stony Brook, I was lucky enough to have worked in a summer program. It was a STEM program. And so I worked with 2 or 3 women who were social workers, and, you know, they talked with me about careers, and I thought maybe social work was for me, and then this Woodrow Wilson opportunity came up. And so I was able to then apply for it
Okay.
while I was still at Stony Brook. And so that was really where I got my footing in deciding I wanted to go straight through, because it was a full financial support program. So meaning 100% of grad school would have been covered. Could I have taken a year off? Probably. I may have gotten it deferred, but I figured I had this opportunity, let me go straight through. To me, there was no benefit in stopping because, you know, where would I start working? What would I do? I knew that getting that master's degree would certainly help me get my foot in the door for my career.
So let me ask you a question, because you're like 5%, okay? Because most people's like, I'm gonna just go there and discover life. So you said you could have, but you were so focused. So what would you say to someone who, again, there's nothing wrong with necessarily taking a break, but a lot of people, there's a high percentage
Yeah.
once you take a break, most likely
They
you're
don't
not
go
gonna
back.
go back. So what would you tell a young person, because it doesn't really matter who they are sex-wise, but like to stay focused, like don't, sometimes that could be the worst decision you could ever make. It could be a good decision,
Right.
but statistically wise, it might not be the best decision. So what would you tell that person?
I mean, I think everyone has to make their own decision. I was fortunate enough that I had a mother who financially was able to support me, and so I was able to live at home. For some people, that's not the case. They're not able to live at home. And so they have to be on their own. They have to make a living. They have to work. So my mother, her priority was always get educated, get yourself, you know, situated career-wise. That was the only thing I knew, because that's the only thing I ever saw, right? I didn't see my mother slacking off. I didn't see her not doing her best. She had to work to support 2 children in this country as an immigrant. So I always saw that work ethic in front of me. So for me, it was never an option. However, not everyone has that
Right.
privilege. To me, it was a privilege in hindsight to be able to be at home, to be able to not have to work, right?
Right.
So I had the financial package was set, and it wasn't an income-based program. It was just, here is this fund that's available to encourage people of color to pursue public policy as a career. And so the funds these are private funds. The funds were there. All you had to do was apply for it, like any other program. And so I was really fortunate. But had I not had that, I
Right.
might have had to stop and work to help support my home. But my mother, you know, she was a hard worker, you know, worked 2 jobs, worked 2 shifts as a nurse. You know, she did what she had to do to make sure that we had a roof over our heads, that we were able to still travel in summertime, go to Barbados.
Right. So
And
right now,
yeah.
I'm basically jealous. She apparently have like the best mom in the whole entire world, right? And obviously, I need to go home and have a conversation with my mom. But it's nice to hear that you have the support. So obviously, support is a big deal in order to
Definitely.
keep going forward and believing in yourself, being resilient, and because again, that's not easy.
That's right.
So one of the things that I have here, your agenda for Children of Tomorrow, where co to NYC Administration of Children's Services. It seemed like you always like was into community development or developing futures. So, I know what kind of big word he tried to put here, but tell me about the journey in always ending up in the community development.
So one of the projects that I worked on at Stony Brook was, it was an internship, a class project. I worked with this professor who was, photographing homes and how people use their porches. It was like this special assignment that I was given the opportunity to help with. And so, that was sort of my connection to community, right?
Okay.
Him doing research on how people, he was writing a book on how people use their front porches. Very interesting. That was he was a sociology professor.
Okay.
And then there was another project I worked on that allowed me to really understand what homelessness looked like.
Really?
And it was a research project, again, really trying to determine where homeless people were at that time.
Okay.
And this was out in Long Island in Suffolk County. And so I got an exposure. I got some taste of what it was like to work in communities, see people.
And you're like, all of a sudden, you're like, ooh, this is it for me. I love people. I love community. I love helping.
because you realize that not everyone is in the situation that you're in, right? We all come from different economic conditions and situations, social conditions and situations, and we end up where we are because of a multitude of reasons. And so people who are in situations that are less than desirable, it's not always because they've done something or they have a deficit, but there's structural racism that we know prevents a lot of people from moving in the direction that they might want to move in. There are a multitude of issues.
Right.
And so really trying to understand what is it that makes societies look the way that they look and the people in those societies operate in the way they operate. What are the barriers that are holding people back? What are the systems that are in place? So I learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot about all of these topics, and those things intrigue me.
So with all the things, like, have you ever paused and said, okay, if I wasn't doing this, what would you be doing? Because a lot of time when we grew up, especially in the islands, you have an idea of, I'm going to be a ballerina or I'm going to do this. But what if you wasn't doing community and giving so much of yourself, because that's what I hear, what do you think you would be doing?
I would say if money were not an object,
Yes,
if money were
that's what
not the issue, because I think I am by nature a helper. That is who I am. I'm a planner, number one, but I'm also a helper. But I love yoga. I learned to be a yoga instructor back in 2009. Taught yoga for a few years, was teaching up until I was maybe 6 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant.
Really?
But I love it because I see the results, first within myself, but also within other people. And it's something that I love. But if money were no object. But I think, in terms of a career path, the work that I do, I love. I love creating systems and processes and programs that really help support communities and help them thrive. So in whatever way I can be a help and a support to others while I'm, leading, I use this term servant leader because I do believe that when you are leading, you must always serve. And that is part of either being a manager or being a change agent, being a policymaker. Service is always a part of what you do. And so for me, I can't be specific about like what else I would be doing. Yoga is more of it's a passion.
What I do, like when I do ask questions like that, again, nothing is wrong with how you were before, but when you started to say yoga, your whole face light up like, So it's nice to see.
I would do it for free.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth of the matter. I would do it for free. It's not something you do because you want to get paid because, you could make a living out of it, but for me, it's not a business. It's more of giving. It's more of sharing something that
Okay.
I know is impactful.
Understand.
Yeah.
So we talk about all the good things, all the things you love about your job, but what would you say are some challenging things about your job?
I mean, I think, there's never enough time to do all the things that you want to get done. Prioritizing is really important. So I think really figuring out how to manage your to-do list is important as a manager and administrator. There's always that pressure of time and making sure that your deliverables are met and that the people around you are getting the support you need. But I think time is one of the biggest challenges just
Okay.
because the job is the job. It's a job that requires a lot of multitasking and a lot of using different skill sets. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest, just feeling like there's always something to be done.
Isn't that amazing? No matter what she says, everything sounds amazing and nice and sweet. But with that said, so if someone wanted to follow in your footsteps, right, what is the best ways to get to the level that you have reached thus far?
I will say that it is impossible or close to impossible to get anywhere without the support of others around you. And so for me, having mentors, friends, I got into this field because I had a very close friend who at that time was studying social work and public administration at Columbia. I was doing public administration, and she said to me, "Oh, this new program called ACT, Agenda for Children Tomorrow, is starting. They're looking for interns." She was the deputy director. She said, "We're looking for interns. Would you like to do an internship? Because that's a requirement of being in the master's program. You have to do an
Really? Wow,
internship."
yeah.
And I did that. And that was really the beginning. That was the beginning of me getting my foot in the door. Looking at Indeed and all of these other websites, that's great.
Yeah.
But we often know that it's very difficult to get those
it's all-
inroads.
So what I hear is all about building relationships, definitely.
Exactly. Building relationships, something as simple as someone help connect you to a resource.
Yeah.
If you reach out to someone and network with them, always follow up. Always say thank you. Always say, here's what happened. Here's what didn't happen. If you landed the job, if you got another phone call, a networking phone call, very important to maintain relationships and to say thank you to people.
I love that because I think people forget
Yes.
that part, and it might seem so simple and minute, but it's one of the most impactful and powerful things, right? With that, I wanted to say also, being that you have an idea of the island as you've been back and forth, you've been to Barbados. If you wasn't here in this moment, and where do you think, from what you know of the Caribbean, or maybe what you see in your parents or some other people you might know, where you think you would have been doing in the Caribbean, or which country you think you would be living in, island?
Probably Barbados. I would say Barbados because of the scale. It's a relatively small island, 166 square miles.
Yeah.
Easy to get around, easy to navigate, very safe. I don't know what I would be doing in terms of my career. It's
Yeah.
very hard to think of what I would be doing, but I imagine that, if I guess that you're saying if I didn't move here
Yeah.
as a child.
Because sometimes you look back at your parents, maybe what they were doing, or even family members. I'm sure you still have family in some of the islands,
Yeah.
or what they are doing. But sometimes, like for me, when I look back, I would be definitely pregnant with like 5 kids or something like that, and just watching my dynamic. And I always like sewing clothes and stuff like that. I can't even thread a needle right now, but I used to sew clothes since I was like 9. So I have again, we don't know what could happen, but I can see that would be somewhere along the lines of what would have happened. So that's why I always like to ask people from the Caribbean, like, what do you think you would be doing?
That's a great question. I mean, I always liked sports.
I asked it.
Yes, I always like sports. So, maybe running, maybe doing track and field.
Yeah, sports is a big thing in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and it's very supported. It's very supported on many levels. So I'd probably do that because I think in this, when we came here, my sister and I came here, there were opportunities, yes, to be involved in sports, but dealing with navigating, commuting back and forth. In my case, commuting from Brooklyn Tech all the way to Queens, not so great of a situation. So I think in a smaller setting like Barbados would have been probably an easier go of it in terms of just navigating those kinds of things like practice, after school practice, because
Gotcha.
there's much more of a sense of community.
Yes,
So I
that's
think
one thing I
it would have
remember
been
a lot.
easier.
Yes. So we wanted to, girl, good luck with these questions. We have something called Quickfire questions. So good luck. So it's only about 5 questions.
Sure.
And it's all about the Caribbean. So which one are you choosing from these following? A cabin with a view of Kaicha Falls, a beach house in Tobago, or a house on, I guess you would know, Calice Bay, Barbados?
That I don't even know where that bay is.
And she talked about Barbados
Never heard of it.
100 times, you know.
Never heard of
Everything
it.
was Barbados and it's small, and she tell you the square feet and all this miles, but she don't even know where the bay is.
There are lots of bays, lots of bays. That one I don't know.
So then it would be between Tobago and Kaicha Falls.
I would always choose Barbados because that is home.
Well,
That
so
is
that's your
home.
homework to go and
Yeah.
find where that
What's
bay
the spelling? How do you spell it?
Carlil.
Oh, Carlisle. That's
See? Thank God. Well, I not Bayesian
Carlisle
people.
Bay. Yeah, Carlisle Bay. I
So
think
did
that's
you use that?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
it looked like Kalish, but I'm
maybe
Trinidad.
maybe there's something else. Maybe, who knows? Who knows?
So are you a sand and sea or a hike through nature type of person, or none of that for me?
I would say hike for sure.
Number 3, let's end the debate. Is it chicken curry or curry chicken? Don't let
Oh.
me fight you.
Curry chicken. Curry chicken. That goes without saying.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Number 4, what was your favorite thing about the Caribbean?
Oh, I have to pick one?
Yeah, just the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, the people.
Oh, that's sweet.
The people.
Number 5, what saying do you remember hearing that stuck with you to this day? In any other islands, what saying? You know,
Oh my gosh.
You know your parents always saying something.
What saying?
Yeah.
I can't think of one. But you know, West Indians have such a way of using language
Yes.
and telling stories. I guess the one that I remember my mother saying, and she still says it now,
Yeah.
something like her father would tell her, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Yeah.
That one I do remember because she still says it to this day.
Awesome.
Yes,
See,
yes.
at this present moment, what we would like to do is present you with this amazing. Make sure you all could zoom in on this, okay? Thank you. So we are presenting you with this in recognition of amplifying Caribbean brilliance. We thank you for your contributions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So with that said, guys, thank you so much, Ms. Dale Joseph, for coming and blessing us with your presence and giving such good insight and telling us about your background, because I'm pretty sure someone looking at this will be like, if she can do it, I can do it. Especially you talking about the schools and stuff and the certain situations that you have, and knowing that having a supportive mother, supportive families, looking for coaches, forming relationship can make a huge difference in your life. So that's it for Caribbean Brilliance. Until we live again, this is Mss Francois.